Okay, yeah. It says preparing to live stream at the moment.
I think
Um,
we are live, are we?
Yep.
okay, take it away.
All right. Hello. Welcome back to Women Want Change by Fourth Wave. We are a publication on Medium where writers get paid, as Patsy says. And we are hosting a very special one where we're going to be talking about women's issues beyond borders. So, with us, we have a few different special guests, and we have, of course, our editor-in-chief, Patsy Ferguson. So, to start with, I invited Ndidi. So Ndidi is a very interesting person. She is, first of all, a singer-songwriter in the blues genre, if I am correct, and more or less. And you also mentioned you're a playwright, and I was very inspired as well from the fact that you have had music credits for some very interesting TV programs, including one of my favorites, which was Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madame C.J. Walker. And you did Orange is the New Black and a lot of like very cool stuff. And so you have also moved around from Canada to the US. You were in New York and then back, and you've been back and forth a bit. And now you are currently in the west coast of Ireland. And yeah, you are first of all super inspiring. The next one, of course, we have Martine. Martine, I would love for you to do an introduction as well. I'll get to you guys in a bit, but I just want to quickly put out a little bit of info and then we get to talking. Martine is also one of our writers here at Fourth Wave. She's contributed with a lot of very cool and interesting pieces, specifically based in feminist literature. And she's originally Italian who moved to Canada, I believe, when you were 18, you said.
I moved to the US when I was 19, and then I moved to
19.
Canada about 5 years ago. Yeah.
Yes. And so you've also had not the same kind of journey, but a very similar journey of having moved from where you're from to a new place and kind of having to set up life. Of course, with Ndidi, the difference is you've done this in adulthood, and Martine, you kind of just started adulthood with the moving process. Then, of course, we have Patsy, our editor-in-chief, who is the brain of this operation. And now you are from the US and you live in the US. So you come from a completely different faction of life, right?
Mhm.
So what I would love is for you guys to, first of all, take it ahead and tell us very briefly, or as long as you want, about your general experience of what it's like to be where you are currently, and for you and Didi and Martine, since you moved, what it was like to set up shop, to set up a career, to set up friendships even, and to access things like healthcare. Because I know that pretty much everywhere in the world, it's especially gotten difficult. Even when we're starting to name things, we're starting to understand more about our bodies. Women are not really getting the kind of care that we deserve. So I would love to hear, starting with Ndidi, tell us a little bit about your experiences so far.
Well, it's been interesting. I mean, I think that I've always moved around as a child. I had a stepfather that was in the RCMP, and when you're an RCMP officer, you get stationed in small places around Canada. So I've always moved, and so I was very used to the idea of just leaving and having to set up shop again. I do find it interesting doing it now at this particular stage of my life, and I've found it to be it's challenging. It's challenging. It's weird. I'm older, so making friends is a bit strange. It's not quite as easy of a thing to do when you get older because life is so different for people kind of in my age range at this point, and I don't necessarily do the same things they're doing, so it's tricky. And trying to reestablish a career, I mean, I'm having to do it from the ground up, much like I did
Yes.
many, many decades ago, and it's it's been a challenge. It's weird. It's weird, and I keep doing it, and I'm like, this is what I'm doing again. But it's been interesting. And in terms of healthcare, I mean, I am new, so I've just sort of moved and become a proper resident in Ireland in this year. So I still fell under the umbrella of my Canadian healthcare, and I'm constantly back in Canada for work. So I was constantly back there. So I'm just here now, and I'm just starting to navigate that system. And doing it as a perimenopausal woman has been very interesting because I'm very specific. I know what my needs are. And the thing about me, though, is I've never taken health. I've never thought that, I mean, a doctor's a doctor, and I shouldn't sit here and be like, I'm a doctor, but no, but I know my body. And I know when I know when things are weird. I know when things are off. I know when things are working right. I know when I need help. And I'm very diligent about finding solutions, about reading medical articles for things that I think I'm going to have to deal with. Because as a woman of African descent, healthcare globally treats us much differently than anyone else. And we get inferior healthcare. We're constantly challenged. We're not believed for a lot of things. There's
Yes.
understanding that Black women don't feel pain, our skin is thicker, just all kinds of crazy, extremely racist and eugenics based theories in Western medicine. So being in the Western world, I come very prepared with studies, outdated studies, and the most modern research. I'm very particular. I know exactly what I need to do, what I'm trying to take. I go and I bring all of this to doctors. So I'm extremely annoying. So they just do what I ask them to do because they're like, we don't want this woman in here being annoying. So I have had to teach myself to be an extreme advocate for my own health. So we will see. I'm just going to start to navigate the Irish health system. I mean, it's a bit different than the Canadian one in that you do pay for things. It is free
Yes.
to a degree, but like doctor's visits, you pay out of pocket. Whereas in Canada, you don't pay out of pocket for that. That comes from your universal health care. But we shall see. That's to be continued. Huh.
Yeah, and honestly, when you started talking as well, I was thinking about how much medical misogyny and misogynoir exists in most parts of Europe. Because we have the same thing here as well. I see so many of my friends talk about how difficult it is to get the kind of care that you need. So it's kind of bittersweet to hear you also say that, no matter what happens, I have to always come prepared, almost armored. Hello to your cat. Uh, armored to ensure that you're getting the kind of care you deserve. Now, coming to Martine. Martine, tell us, I am sure your experience is also vastly different as well, coming from Italy to the US and then Canada.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I bring a bit of a different perspective to this because I struggled not so much with the physical health aspect of it, but with the mental health because when I moved to the US at the age of 19, I was later diagnosed with first depression, then anxiety, then borderline personality disorder. And to navigate the healthcare system, specifically for mental health, was extremely difficult. Yeah, first of all, I was a student there, so I had some kind of health coverage, but not nearly enough to cover all of the medical expenses that I ended up having to cover, which was honestly shocking for me as an Italian because we do have a pretty decent healthcare system. So even just the idea of having to pay for an ambulance ride to go to the hospital was absolutely shocking to me. So yeah, and then I was very disappointed by the way that the medical establishment around me, and remember this was in New York, the way that they approached my mental health, the way that they were highly dismissive of BPD specifically, because it's also very highly stigmatized condition. So that was my experience, and honestly, it was a pretty rough one. I lost a lot of faith in the medical establishment because of my experience. One thing that I highly appreciate about Canada is, first of all, their healthcare system compared to the US one. I think it's immensely better and more functional and more fair. But also in terms of physical health, one thing that I experience and that I deeply appreciate is the access to contraception, because I when I got my Nexplanon implant a few years back, and then I got it basically replaced 1 year ago, I thought to myself, I am so lucky to have access to this and to have access to it in such a safe and convenient way, because basically it's not covered by my insurance because I am an international worker. Yeah, I do not have the citizenship yet, so I had to pay it of my own pocket. But still, even just having such an easy and prompt access to a form of contraception that was the right fit for me just felt so yeah, I just felt so lucky, and I thought of what a privilege it is at this specific time to be able to have that type of medical access. Yeah.
Absolutely. And honestly, that there's almost a relief in the way that you spoke about it as well that I really appreciated, because I'm sure you must have seen this whenever you visit Italy, that as much as we have a really good healthcare system here, there are certain things like access to contraceptives is easy, but there is still a little bit of stigma. You still feel that sense of being watched, that I feel like happens more if you're local or you've been here long enough in a small town to where everyone's going to talk about it. So there's like an additional layer when you think of community. But then when you talk about Canadian healthcare versus the United States, it actually is so intriguing that there's such a disparity, even though ideally, Patsy, I think you can speak to this. Ideally, there is more of a free culture, at least when it comes to talking about it. But I think you've also the US is very Puritan when it comes to things like this sort of healthcare. Would you go a little bit further into it?
Are you asking me, Patsy?
Yes. Did I not say Patsy? What did I say?
You did, but I wasn't sure who you were talking. So I just wanted to, in terms of my experience with healthcare, I have had a good experience, but basically because I was employed as a teacher, and teachers, at least in my school district, have a union. And because we have a union, we got health care. And if I had been on my own or working for a company or working anywhere else, I probably wouldn't have gotten as good of a deal. But in my particular profession, I was covered, my family was covered,
Mm.
and that was fabulous. But I'm retired now, and the same thing, there was a little period in between when I quit my job and when I officially retired or reached the age where they cover your health care as an older person. And during those years, it was extremely expensive. It would take, I mean, our rent already is like three-quarters of our income in the US. I mean, rent is insane. It's like half. And then healthcare is the other half. And then you have no money left. So it's really a bad system. And they've tried to get universal healthcare, but not I mean, some sectors have tried, but we don't have it. I also have a son who has a major mental illness,
Yeah.
and getting help for him has been completely a shit show. Sorry, but for 20 years we've been trying to help him. First off, I mean, the mental health industry in general is for major mental illnesses like schizophrenia. They don't really have a cure. They don't have a medicine that's universally applicable. They don't even have a test. I mean, one doctor might say you have schizophrenia, another might say you're bipolar, another might say this is because you're drinking too much or something. So they don't know. So that's a state of world medicine. But as far as getting help, nobody's getting any help. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's like a horror movie. In certain neighborhoods, there are people who are doing drugs on the street, who are um, half clothed, shitting, puking,
Oh,
uh, lying on the sidewalk, and nobody's taking care of them. And they say it's a freedom. Oh, we're not going to institutionalize them, but that's just an excuse, as far as I can understand, to not spend the money. We'd rather spend billions of dollars a day bombing in the innocent people, or our leaders would, than taking care of the vulnerable people among us. And it's a crying shame. It's terrible. And I also know a woman who had multiple children with schizophrenia. Her husband was Canadian, and they moved to Canada primarily to get the health care for their kids because it's just not possible here to get it. So that's my experience with the healthcare system. I just want to do my little plug about our publication on Medium. Look for us all there. Um, we have almost 75,000 followers there now. So
yes.
we're building a really good, strong feminist community, and it's wonderful to be a part of it. And more are welcome. So hopefully we'll make a change somehow.
Yes. Especially with these live streams. We also, I think, are over 100 subscribers, which is
Yes,
amazing.
yes,
Thank
on the
you.
live stream.
Yes,
And
thank you to
and
everyone who watches.
we'd love you to participate in the live chat or make a comment or um, subscribe. Yeah.
Yes. And in all of this, I also forgot to introduce myself. So hi, I'm yours truly, Sangeeta. I am the development editor of Fourth Wave. So I basically do these live streams alongside Patsy, Uwana, and Muniba, are two principal editors. And so my experience, I guess, is different because I come from a background of both universal healthcare here in Italy and in India. We do have very subsidized healthcare, and it's only partially private. And then in the UAE, where I'm from, where I was born and raised, we had completely private healthcare. So it's all based on your job and the insurance coverage that your work is going to give you. So how that works is if you don't have a job, you have no medical insurance. You don't have any medical insurance, like similar to the US, you have nowhere to go. You get sick, it's on your own dime, and it's extremely expensive. But also a lot of certain specific levels of care. For example, for menopause, for women with endometriosis. Now, my sister um, is one of those people that I know who's very close to me and has endometriosis, has struggled with the condition because we don't have enough targeted health care. And the only thing that she, as well as friends that I have here in Italy and family back home in India, one thing everybody gets told is just have kids and you'll be fine. And that's not the cure, because for many years I thought the cure was, oh, if you have kids, maybe, your organs stop fusing, but apparently not. It's just you have a certain level, certain amount of time that you're going to be fertile, after which most of your organs will start to fuse in further and surgery will get harder. So basically, you just procreate and then we don't know what happens to you, essentially. So I grew up
Can I
around.
just
Yeah, go on.
can I just jump in real quick? Because
Yeah,
what you just said, it actually reminded me. I read a lot about the history of hysteria, and historically,
yeah,
one of the prescribed cures for hysteria from like ancient Greece to the Middle Ages was for women to have children. That it was actually recommended by the specialists of the time that a woman just
cure.
had a child in order to cure her hysteria. Yeah.
Wow.
There was also,
Amazing.
I believe they
Hmm.
also said orgasms would help, but that was not as popular as the have the children thing, which is, it's
Yeah.
terrible. And even with my sister, I know that it has been a nightmare trying to get specific health help when it comes to, now she had early onset menopause. So because of her condition, because of all the surgeries that she had, and it was brutal. We've all kind of watched helplessly because there's very little you can do, and you won't even get hormones, and it's so difficult to even get your insurance to clear it. So that was in a place where we have private insurance. Now, I know, and Didi, you come from Canada, where I think you have much better healthcare, at least compared to the US and
Yeah,
the UAE, at least comparatively.
yeah.
So I would
But
love to know a little bit more, yes, about your experience specifically with perimenopause.
oh, well, I am extremely fortunate that I have an incredible doctor. She's a female doctor, EB, and
Mm.
her entire client base, patient base is either perimenopausal or postmenopausal women.
Oh,
So she's
nice.
very on top of being aware, doing the research, going to conferences. She's very, very up to date. I lucked out because my friends in the same experience are having a nightmare of a time with their doctors, even other women doctors, just because I guess their clientele is not that. It's very, very, very difficult for them.
Mm.
Honestly, I can't. I'll see how it goes here. I have a new doctor I'm meeting in a couple weeks. We'll see how Ireland is. I mean, I think because I'm so on top of it, it'll be okay. But I was very lucky that my doctor, she literally said to me at one point, she said, Indeedy, you don't have to worry about me ever not giving you something. She's like, I
Okay.
trust you. You know your body. She goes, you're not going to, as a doctor, I would never say, no, you don't need estradiol. No, like, I'm not going to be the one. The minute this and this happens, you tell me, you get what you need. She's like, I will never. And she's the first and only doctor in my entire, almost 50 years of life that has actually said, I will give you what you need. Don't worry about that. And so that's like, she's like a unicorn because that's not even heard of in Canadian healthcare. And in terms of like, I'm very glad that you got help Martine with in terms of like mental health stuff, and you find out that in Canada it's been good. I mean, the States would be a nightmare for that, but because where I'm from is Vancouver, and we have a very massive addiction situation there, where it's similar to what you were saying, Patsy, where people are just flat out, and there's not a lot of resources going towards frontline workers, safe inject spaces, etc. But the one thing that is good that Canada has done is federally recognized addiction as a mental health issue. So it's actually considered a mental health condition. So therefore, if you're an addict, you can access certain things through the medical system that you wouldn't if it was you're just an addict. So
Mm.
that is a good thing, but it's still, there isn't nearly enough awareness or support as there should be for mental health conditions. I think that's a global issue, though. I do think it's much bigger than just Canada, the US, Italy, Ireland. It's
Mm.
globally, we have a very strange we have a very strange understanding of our brains. We don't understand our brain. We really don't. We only understand like maybe 40% of it's a very unknown sort of field. And we often disconnect ourselves from our bodies from here up. Here up is like, I know some people that don't treat mental health as like an actual embodied thing. It's like our brains control the rest of our organs. Are we not aware of that? Like we have a very strange disassociation between our minds and our bodies, even though they're one and the same. And so until I
Yes.
think a lot of that line of thought sort of starts to dissipate, we won't really get truly innovative research into mental health, the truly innovative research we need until we start approaching it like we approach every other disease that affects every other organ of the body. Until we do that, it's not going to really help. But yes, Vancouver has the exact same issues that you were saying, Patsy, and our governments don't seem to want to care. In fact, the premier, so in Canada, there's multiple levels of government. There's provincial government, like state government, and then
Mm.
there's the federal government and municipal. And our municipal and provincial governments in British Columbia have decided that if you're an addict, you could be forced into rehab. And it's like, that's not how it works. I will have 14 years of sobriety on August 2nd this year. So I understand addiction very personally. um, Addiction and neurodivergence are two mental health conditions that I deal with. And it's sort of like that will never work. You can force people into these institutes, but they're not going to dry out. They're going to go out and actively start using again, because the root of the problem is it's not just mental health, but there's trauma. Nobody happy is out here trying to like be an addict. Happy people, people that are regulated, people that are embodied, people that feel safe, people that are okay, aren't out here abusing substances. It's the people that are not, that have deep-rooted traumas, that feel very unsafe, that things are unstable. We're constantly trying to get away and get out of these bodies because these bodies are no longer safe. So if we don't start treating that as a baseline, nobody's getting cured. We don't, and we don't have, and we don't have the societal structures to make it better. Like we don't have housing, we don't have food, like there's all of these things that create these tiny paper cuts of trauma that we're trying to wade through that dysregulate our nervous system, which keep us functioning. And if they're not regulated, we're not embodied. If we're not embodied, we can't really survive. And so when you are using substances, you feel okay for a moment.
Yes.
I hear you and I agree with you, but I also want to say I have a sister who had alcoholism, and we staged an intervention. We had a professional help us who did a great job telling us how to do it. And she went from the intervention into a rehab, against her will. But because she wanted to escape the intervention, it was so unpleasant for her to have everyone sitting in a circle telling her why they were worried about her very specifically. And she got clean and she never has relapsed. So and I also feel with my son, there are times he needs to be taken against his will. His life is in danger. If he's raving and has an infection, so his foot is the size of cantaloupe, but he doesn't want to go to the hospital because he's a paranoid. I
Oh,
want him taken to the hospital against his will, and I want that infection treated, and I want his life saved. And, so some people, I'm not saying it's going to be a permanent solution for him. He's not going to say, "Oh, now I'm going to, you know, do everything differently." But it did save his life. It does save his life on occasion to take him into the hospital against his will. He's been 5150, which is the legal term, multiple times over the last 20 years. And I've called for it. I've called the police. Please come get my son. He needs to be in the hospital. So that's my perspective. I hear what you're saying, and I I don't, there's also a biological component. Like, I don't think my son had a trauma that created this mental illness. He did one time say he was molested, which scared me because I thought he was going to accuse me or his dad. But no, he was talking about an event that happened when he was an adult, and someone who said they were going to help him ended up using him sexually, a man. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah, that was horrible for him and horrible to hear. But in terms of the onset of his illness, nothing happened.
Well,
He took drugs. He took a lot of drugs. And I think that he, flipped. I think he had a vulnerability, a genetic vulnerability. My father also had bipolar, and he flipped a switch somehow, and then he couldn't flip it back. He couldn't get it back.
I do just want to clear up, I'm speaking specifically in terms of addiction to drugs and alcohol. When it comes to bipolar, schizophrenia, BP, borderline personality, autism and ADHD, which I have, these are things that are genetic and they're wires. And I don't think that that's rooted in a specific trauma. I just think when you're leaning towards addiction, there is deep pain and usually a fissure that puts you, and there's also genetic component. I think but in terms of these sorts of, depression, anxiety, borderline personality, autism, ADHD, schizophrenia, bipolar, these are chemical and wiring in it. I don't think any trauma specific to that. And so I just allow me to clear that up. That's not what I'm saying. I'm specifically talking
And
about
even alcoholism
alcohol and
too.
drugs.
I mean,
There's
some
genetics to
people,
that. It goes through my family, and I'm an
yeah.
alcoholic. But when in terms of this program that the premier is talking about in the municipal government, it's to round up houseless people. It's not somebody staging an intervention or a child with a parent that cares that's getting into the section. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's a very different circumstance than what was meaning he's just saying cops just see them, round them up, throw them in a rehab. I think that's in effect.
But
There's no
isn't there,
care.
aren't
There's
they
no,
better in rehab than on the street? Aren't they better off in rehab than they're going to have a
yes, but you know
bed,
what they
they're going
could
to have
do with this?
food.
Rehab works, yeah.
If we put money into modular housing, you know, it would be better if they could go into permanent housing, if there could be proper food kitchens, if there could be proper jobs that are accessible. Those things to me would be much better. You can throw them in rehabs. These rehabs are underfunded and understaffed, so they're not going to get good care there. So it's like, no, that's actually not at all the better solution. They don't want to be there. They'd prefer to be in housing. We once had a modular housing program that got canceled because to do this weird thing that the premier decided would save money, they're like, we'll just throw them in rehabs. Great, okay, but what about the housing that we were starting to build to give houseless people a place to live? And if you look at the demographic, the racialized demographic of a large portion of the houseless people, it's a very, very complicated thing. And this solution in this circumstance is not actually at all beneficial. It's not informed. There's no trauma information. It's not trauma informed. There's no empathy. There's no care. It's just done to clean the streets for like upcoming events that were happening in the city. It's not done out of wanting to actually truly help people. Because if you want to help people, you'd have to do things, put plans in place for when they get out of the rehab. That's not a permanent place they're going to live. So that's where it's much more convoluted and a bit complicated from my end and from what I have seen.
I hear you. I hear
happening.
you. But it is complicated and it is like different for different patients and different people.
Very true.
For what it's worth, actually, weirdly enough, I have some level of experience on both sides of your arguments. So, for example, in India, it's actually very common for people in lower castes to end up in situations where they get addicted because of voting. Now, I know that sounds really weird, but what happens, and I know people hate talking about this, especially Indians, but I feel like it's relevant. A lot of your small time MLAs, a lot of your ministers who are in local elections, what they would do is start giving out party favors, which are drugs. And if you want to keep getting your supply, you have to keep voting for them. So a lot of these guys on low levels, would keep getting reelected. And now this is not a grand scale operation. These are very specific states within India. I'm talking about the north because that's where I'm from. I know this is not necessarily a thing that happens in the south. I wish Suma was here so she could tell us.
Yes.
But this was a thing that was happening for a while because they had a vested interest. And in other parts of India, because it is a corrupt thing, we have, for example, the place that I'm from, Punjab, has one of the largest drug problems in India. And funnily enough, the Punjab that's also in Pakistan side has a similar pretty bad drug use problem. And a lot of it is also directly related to the way that the government is treating or mistreating people. So people at the lowest rungs, they get addicted. They don't care where it comes from. It just makes them feel better for a little while. And
Can I
so
ask what drugs? I'm surprised because I envisioned very conservative. I consider Pakistan and India conservative, and I would imagine people don't do drugs there. I guess I don't know much.
I feel like drugs don't have anything to do with conservatism. I know where you can get that because you're looking at it from a Western perspective. In India, we're very different with it. What, for example, weed is actually very commonly used during our color festival, Holi. We have weed pretty extensively, and sometimes you put it into your milk or your sweets and stuff, and it's something you have with your family. So we're not the same when it comes
Uh-huh.
to the West. So it's not really a conservative, non-conservative thing. The only thing is women are less likely to be given it, but then a lot of girls who are trafficked as well are trafficked and then kind of given freedom and told, well, you could leave anytime you want, but they don't because they're addicted to heroin. They're addicted to cocaine, and they get their supply from their pimp. And so when it comes to that, those were, sorry, certain exposés that I saw while I was in India through other people, through what's it called, through my parents, talking about this is what we escaped when we left. This is what we were seeing. And I've had cousins who are no longer with us who were targets of this sort of thing. I don't want to get so much into the trafficking aspect of it, because also it's a whole can of worms. We were mainly talking about mental health issues as well, and drugs.
And
So maybe,
Sangeeta, do you
yeah.
see that someone has said something in the chat? Do you want to
No,
read?
I don't
I
have it
have
open.
I
Do
have it.
you?
Yeah, we have someone named Deborah Niles 6054. Thanks for participating. And
Okay.
she says, I agree with the idea that sometimes we need to be able to call for help with our loved ones, especially when delusions are involved.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had that sentiment because I've joined groups of mothers whose children have a major mental illness, and most parents of people who have a major mental illness have that want that ability to call for someone to help and
Yes.
capture their child who's endangering themselves or maybe other members of the family or people on the street.
No, I agree with that, because I was going to come back to the other part. When Ndidi was talking about it, I think you're talking more on a systemic level, which is what I was getting into. There is a certain level of privilege where some people just don't have family. And then you're kind of stuck with, well, how quickly does giving someone intervention devolve into taking away personal freedom, personal rights? So that is one conversation. And I think, Patsy, though, from your perspective, so, I have a family member, my aunt is schizophrenic, and we've had lots of times where she's just disappeared. She just ran away from home. She got really scared, and I don't want to say hallucinate, because I feel like it's she doesn't see it that way. She genuinely feels fear, and she runs away from home. And then we're out in the night looking for her. We have no one to call, because in India, this is just not taken seriously at all. And she's based in India. So every now and then we would get calls when I was living in Dubai. Then I moved here. My aunt is still very fortunate that she has family that still tries the best that we can every time we're there as well, to, intervene, take her to the doctor, because she wouldn't even go to the dentist. She's that scared. And you do sometimes need to take reign of someone. And my cousin is her, for all intents and purposes, her daughter is her guardian, medically speaking. So she gets to make a lot of decisions for her. And this is not common, because usually it's the other way around. Children don't become guardians for their parents, but we don't have a choice at this stage. We need someone who lives with her to be able to say, do you know what? I need help. I'm taking her the to the doctor, and she has to come, even if she's scared, even if she says no. But I feel like it depends, like you said, it's a case by case thing. Like when Ndidi talks about who's best, at the end of the day, it's like, whose best interest is it in? Family will always choose the best interest of the patient, right? But with a government, they're choosing the best interest of themselves almost. Like you don't always end up in a space where the government is making the right decision for even the citizens. A lot of times it's just, this is easy for us. And so we're just going to do whatever's the easiest thing. And so sometimes rehab doesn't necessarily even mean real resources. Sometimes it's a slap on the wrist, or it's jail time, or whatever it is. And you don't actually get that help. But it depends from place to place. Like here in Italy, I feel like this is taken very seriously. in a way that maybe in India it's not, in a way that just doesn't exist in the UAE because drugs are completely banned. They see drugs as a conservative issue. So we don't do this at all. Whereas in India, we do grow things like even the most benign things, we do grow them. And there is plantations for that sort of thing. And for lack of a better term, things travel through borders. And so, yeah, there is a certain level of, yes, the government should intervene as well as individual family members should intervene. But then I guess on a universal level, we don't have enough goodwill, if that makes sense. We don't always have people looking out for other people. I feel like that doesn't exist in every scenario. And that's where we kind of you both have really good perspectives there, and but they're on different topics almost, if you think about it, because it's one personal experience versus another.
Exactly. And it's two different sort of, not just personal experiences, but also like tiers of experience and places of
Yes,
experience
worldviews.
and physicality of experience. Like, it's going to be very, 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 very different. And there is still so much, I think, agree, there's so much stigma around anything to do with mental health. Anywhere you go, it's in Ireland, it's in Canada, it's in the US, it's in Italy, it's in India, it's everywhere you go. And so, in terms of trying to navigate that, it's going to be a bit of a crapshoot. You'll do your best.
Speaking of, Martine, you did mention when you were getting your diagnosis that you were also affected by stigma. So would you actually get a little bit deeper into that if you're comfortable with it?
Yeah, actually, it's a very interesting conversation because, of course, mental health is highly stigmatized in, I would say, pretty much all over the world. But specifically, BPD has a very bad reputation. And ironically, part of the reason for that is that there was a movie that came out in the 80s called Fatal Attraction with Glenn Close and Michael Douglas, which became very famous because it was basically a thriller about a man who was having an affair, and then the woman that he was having an affair with becomes absolutely obsessed with him, and she starts stalking him and his family, and she ends up committing some very disturbing, very violent acts. And basically, at this point in time, BPD was still a very like misunderstood condition. Like it had basically just been acknowledged from a medical perspective. And basically, there were some scientists and doctors that took this movie as an example of what BPD was like. And, basically, it's because the behavior of Glenn Close's character in the movie is so violent and so outlandish, a lot of people began to associate that with BPD. And it has caused so much damage that even within the medical profession nowadays, you have doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists who refuse to treat BPD patients because they're afraid that they are going to be violent, that they are going to refuse treatment, that they are going to be difficult to treat. And so, yeah, there is still so much stigma and so many people who still believe that like that character from that movie is an actual example of BPD. And I have actually written an entire essay about this because it has caused so much damage. But yeah, the actual reality of the condition is a lot more nuanced and boring, meaning it's not as sensational as somebody turning into a stalker or acting crazy like that. So actually, that's one of the reasons why BPD is still so highly stigmatized, and it's such a difficult condition to understand and to treat. Because again, a lot of mental health professionals just refuse to treat BPD patients. They argue that BPD patients can be manipulative or resist treatment. And again, all of that is mostly untrue and it comes from stigma. So yeah, it was really hard for me to to find somebody who actually had a compassionate and nuanced understanding of the condition and who was willing to treat me as not just as, I don't know, this quote unquote crazy person with BPD, but as a human being who was struggling with some very specific symptoms, very specific issues. So yeah, it took a lot of different tries to find somebody who actually understood the condition or at least looked at it from a compassionate lens. So yeah.
Can I also interject to add, I did look it up and it seems BPD affects women significantly more than men. Like they are more likely to either suffer from it. It says it's a 3-to-1 ratio for diagnosis at the very least. So I wonder if that's something to do with it as well, because a lot of women's issues, specifically, if I'm not mistaken, especially when it comes to mental health, are not taken as seriously. Women tend to get autism diagnoses late, ADHD diagnoses late. I got my diagnoses late. So it's like a lot of women are like, and Ndidi started off saying, not even believed. So you have to come with your own research and stuff. So I find it very interesting that you say that not only was there stigma, but it was also specifically off of film. Just to understand, do you think that would have existed in Italy? Like, because I genuinely wouldn't know. So, or would you
The
know?
thing is, I think Italy is a very specific case because, at least from where I grew up in, and I'm originally from central Italy near Rome. So I grew up in a very conservative environment in which basically any type of mental health struggle was seen as a highly taboo sort of topic. Like even things such as depression or anxiety were basically taboo among the people that I grew up around. So yeah, I think I have actually never heard of BPD as addressed by the Italian medical community. I do have my psychiatrist is Italian, and yeah, he is one of the very few specialists that I have found who actually understood the condition and was like more compassionate and more open in the way that he was approaching it than other people. But yeah, I think there is still, from my experience at least, there is still such a general stigma surrounding mental health in Italy that even very basic things such as depression and anxiety are incredibly stigmatized. Yeah.
Okay. That's very
We have
interesting. See, yes, go on.
we have another comment from Deborah Now 6054. She says there isn't one solution to the problem.
Mhm.
Um, the reason that families have so little recourse is because in the past people committed family members for nefarious reasons. And
Also.
yeah, we've all heard, especially women, getting put in the loony bin for being wild, for being promiscuous, for
Getting
disobeying their
lobotomies for no
husband.
reason, really.
So,
For
I mean, that's legitimate to have fear of state control. I get it. I get it. But there needs to be, my feeling is, and I'm sorry, this is back to the topic because
no,
I was
please,
discussing. But
please, yeah.
what they did in the US was they used to have asylums and then they shut them all. And literally, I had a nurse tell me they put the patients in the bus, drove them to downtown New York City, kicked them out of the bus. That was it. That was it. You're on your own. So, there has to be something in between
Mm-hmm.
total control of the state and nothing,
Mm.
right? We need a way to monitor the state so they're not abusing
Yes.
patients. We don't need to just abandon them. That's my feeling. But anyway, I was very interested in what you had to say too, Martine, but this sort of pulled me back, the comment.
No, I think actually, if I'm not mistaken, Ndidi and you do agree on the idea of care is important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We just
But
like
on both
we
sides,
just
yeah.
have slightly different perspectives, lived
Mm.
experiences, and my only thing is like I'm viewing it from seeing a rather corrupt governmental body make a very snap decision with limited resource, no input from actual psychiatrists, therapists, frontline workers, which is what we call people that are working with the addiction communities and like trying to provide safe sites, food, bedding, blah blah blah. None of these social workers, none of these people were involved in this actual discussion. And that's why for me it's a massive red flag. If you're not putting in the people that are actually doing the frontline work, these generally speaking, a lot of these people don't have familial support. So
Yes.
that wasn't really included. But even
Also,
families that are dealing with this on a different sort of level, they weren't even included in discussion. It was just this very
Oh yeah, they don't want to hear from mom.
this broad thing that he's like, this is what we're gonna do, and everybody in the province is like, that's a terrible idea. What are you
Mhm.
doing? Like it was like basically to sweep the streets. I mean, that's what they did during the Olympics in Vancouver in 2010. They took all of the houseless people on the downtown east side, which is largely addicts, put them on a bus. There was an empty mental hospital in like Surrey, and they drove them there and said, this is where you go. And so now that entire sort of problem, it's still in the downtown east side because they came right back. But then a large portion have gone out to these other suburbs. So it's just widespread across the lower mainland because they
oh
just
my
went,
God.
get out, see you later. Good luck to you. And now they're doing
Mhm.
massive sweeps, trying basically it's imprisoning people through underfunded rehabs. Like if you're gonna do it, you're not even trying to fund the institutions you're gonna put them in. Like they don't have doctors, they don't have nurses, there's no proper care. So it's like a
Mm.
scam. I wasn't
I'm
speaking on a different, you're talking on a little more personal, sort of more micro, more controlled in terms of familial control, people that actually
yeah.
love these people and have
Mhm.
investment in making sure they're cared for, as opposed to
Yeah, I
people that
mean,
are
I love them, but whoever's at the hospital, I don't
might not.
know,
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah. But I loved what you said about your doctor saying, I will give you, you never have to fear that I won't give you what you need. I feel that's a big problem in mental health is that the psychiatrist wants to tell the patient what they need and doesn't
Mm.
listen to the
Listen to what
patient
they're saying.
necessarily. And I know that's a problem with my son. And for example, he would show up randomly at the behavioral health services and ask for medicine. And they would say, what? No, because it'd be a receptionist. He didn't have an appointment. He didn't have a doctor.
Mm.
He was telling them what meds he wanted. But instead of having a system where they could take someone like that into a waiting room and say, here, let me help you. What is it you need? Let me get a doctor. Let me get, because
Pharmacy even.
these meds that these psych meds are very powerful and with huge side effects. He should be consulted and he should run the show because also guess what? If you tell him you have to take this med, the minute you let him out of the hospital, he's not going to take it.
Mm.
You have to let him be involved in the decision making if you want him to comply when he's released, but that doesn't happen. There's a lot of this top-down control, which is
Uh,
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Martine, I just wanted to say that my first husband had borderline personality disorder. So that was my personal lived experience with somebody suffering with this condition. And it's extremely hard. And I just wanted to give you my condolences and my love, that you're able to show up and you were able to get the help and that you're working through it. It's tricky. What you deal with is very, very tricky and moves through in weird ways and hits other
Mhm.
issues. And I'm very sorry that you have to struggle.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I wonder if the fact that it's mostly females diagnosed with it is a diagnosis problem,
But
or
also,
is it a, a true thing? What do you think, Martine?
Honestly, I am. I mean, I haven't looked into the actual research behind it, but what has always been my impression is that, especially with BPD, I think men who struggle with those symptoms are much less likely to seek
seek
help
help.
than women because
Mm.
um, BPD is a very specific condition. There's a lot of past trauma that goes into it. There's a lot of self self-destructive behavior like self-harming, a lot of emotional dysregulation, and it just feels like things that men ironically might get even more stigmatized for because it's about being vulnerable, acknowledging that you're having not just behavioral issues, but also emotional issues and addressing perhaps past trauma. And, you know, men are often told that you're a man, you're not supposed to talk about your emotions, you're not supposed to overshare. So I think that might be one of the factors that make men less likely to simply seek out help when they're struggling with certain mental health issues and specifically with symptoms that are associated with BPD because there is so much vulnerability that goes into acknowledging those symptoms and seeking help for them.
Do you think there's any correlation towards the underdiagnosis of men and the very valid and what I would agree with reasons why men aren't getting diagnosed as much as in comparison to women and girls getting diagnosed with ADHD? Like we don't get diagnosed at a very high rate as opposed to boys and men much higher because they will present quicker, and whereas women, we are taught to mask. And that's why a lot of women that hit perimenopause, because that portion of the brain just doesn't get the food it needs to function, you can't do it anymore. So that's why there's so many late diagnoses. Because also, again, women were more likely to go and ask for help. And because the brain just cannot do it anymore, we're presenting with more outward signs. Whereas, you know, it used to be just boys. Like when I was a child, the little brown kid growing up in rural Canada, I was like out of my mind. So often, and some teachers knew something was going on. You know, they didn't, but they couldn't place it. I wasn't put with the boys that were diagnosed with autism and ADHD. They got their diagnosis quick. I sort of sifted under the radar, and it wasn't until, you know, my brain stopped working that I got the help that I needed. And I wonder if that's kind of comparable in a way, you know, because, you know, women with BPD are more likely to go and get help, whereas men won't. And you don't present in the same way. Men don't present in the same way women might present. I don't know.
If I can also say something about that, interestingly, like that's a very good point. And I feel like a lot of behaviors, especially self-sabotage, self-destructive tendencies, violence, even if you go through any kind of episodes of rage or fear or panic attacks, even, a lot of that is almost seen as okay when men do it. A lot of like punching a hole in a wall is seen as okay when a man does it. Like the reason why, so my husband has ADD. Two of his friends got ADHD diagnoses as well as children. None of the girls ever got diagnosed that quickly. And the reason for that was they were not only expected to be rambunctious, but it was like the only reason the girls didn't get diagnosed is women don't even allow themselves to be seen that way. They notice when something is off, when I'm not feeling good, I feel like I need to ask for help. The men won't even notice. They'll have time blindness. You know, he'll talk to me about when I was a child, I would sit down to do my homework. It's 2 p.m. And I look up at the time. I just sat. I look up. It's 9 p.m. now. Oh, great. I'm going to bed. That used to be his life as a child. But the thing is, it's also taken more seriously in boys. Because if you notice, across the world, people pay more attention to how boys are doing in school. Because we just expect excellence, or not even expect excellence. There's actually a lot of expectation of mediocrity. But more than that, there's an expectation of, well, if a boy isn't doing so well, there must be a medical explanation. Whereas if a girl isn't doing so well, first of all, that doesn't even exist. Define she's not doing so well. Most girls will mask and mask until they start to burn out from having to do too much. And I feel like that's something that even for me, when I had to get diagnosis, and my diagnosis was a lot easier because obviously there are comorbidities with dyslexia, but when I had to get it, it was kind of straightforward because dyslexia is very easy to spot when you know what you're looking for. So, and even then it was kind of hard to be taken seriously because otherwise I was great at school. I was good at answering. I was a bona fide good kid, and I didn't cause problems. I was always kind of a mediator in my class, and even though to some extent, I don't care. I just don't like seeing fighting, and so I became very used to doing that for other people. So there was an expectation of, well, when you have dyslexia, you're bad at most things. Hand-eye coordination is worse. You're not really very good at writing or reading or task-based things. You just lose track because you have so much time blindness. It was noticeable for me only because at one point I was like, I don't understand. I don't understand anything. I had a fit. And then my parents were like, you know what? You're having fits. Let's just get a diagnosis. Whereas I feel like with boys, you pay attention when they're not even when they're sad, because a lot of the time they don't even present as sad. They don't show you that spectrum of emotion. They don't deal with it
Mm-hmm.
themselves. They're just kind of up and away. And then by the time they're older, when it comes to, I assume with BPD, it's different. I can only speak to things like dyslexia, ADHD, autism even. Um, Unfortunately, there is a term that a lot of psychiatrists still use today, which is high functioning autism, which I hate to hear, but it just basically means I am not as difficult to deal with. Ergo,
Mm-hmm.
I'm better at masking, so I'm high functioning, whereas
I
I'm still suffering the same.
got
But yeah, is that something you've been told as
Oh
well?
yeah, that's what I got told when I got my diagnosis,
Oh,
because my autism doesn't present. My ADHD, when you have ADHD, they are like in two wolves
yeah.
battling each other. And so my autism symptoms that would be more recognizable get overshadowed by ADHD, which overcompensates. So like
Mhm.
I'm constantly trying to figure things out. So it's a massive struggle all the time. I'm struggling all the time. People have no idea it's an invisible disability. And so, and being an older woman, I'm even more invisible. So I'm just like struggling in silence. So thank you for letting me talk about it today. But it's a very tricky thing because they're like, you're very high functioning, because I don't present as what would be somebody on the spectrum. I do if you're paying attention. Other people on the spectrum, other autistic people can see me coming from a mile away. Like I don't even think that I'm presenting that way. And there was a young woman that I know, is a neighbor of my friend, and we were having a garage sale. And I wasn't even talking to her. I was just sitting there like eating a popsicle, and she was sitting across from me. And then I left to go whatever I was doing. And I came back, and my best friend was like, you know what she just said? She just said, "Oh, isn't he autistic?" And I was like, "What? I didn't even talk to her. How did she know?" And she's like, "Well, because she's also autistic." I was like, "Oh, weird." So it's like other people on the spectrum and other people with ADHD and ADD can see it very clearly. But it's in to the professionals, I was very high functioning because, in terms of school, I excelled. I'm very specific
Mhm.
about my art. I can show up places on time most of the time. I can organize my business most of the time. But what nobody sees is that I'm white knuckling it. Like I'm literally hanging on for dear life and just praying it's gonna go okay, because at any moment things could just explode. But it's because I can present that way. But when I
Mhm.
hit perimenopause, which a lot of perimenopausal women found, is because I'm not getting enough progesterone or estrogen, like my hormones, which control
Yeah.
that. They are responsible for creating regulation for women.
Mhm.
Because I
our
don't have enough, I started really presenting pretty hardcore, where they were like, "Oh, okay, whoa, what's going on here?" And struggling a lot more outwardly. And now I don't care. I'll just tell people and be like, "I need help. Help me."
that's great. That not being silent, not hiding is so important. And our commenter had the same experience. She says little girls' symptoms are usually more like daydreaming, absent-mindedness, disorganization,
Mhm.
emotionality. Children are judged by how malleable they are, and young boys with ADHD are more disruptive. I had the same
Mhm.
experience of a diagnosis during menopause. So she got that. And that girls and women work really hard to be that way is expected. I've,
Yes. We're conditioned to mask. We're conditioned to show up as our
Mm-hmm.
best self. And only we
mhm.
know, essentially, when we go back home, how you have to kind of lay down for a little while and just not be overstimulated anymore. Or at least that's the case for me. I have to literally be in a dark room because I can't deal anymore. I need my time. And so actually, one thing that I really wanted to get into that we haven't yet is community, because this is supposed to be beyond borders. I have always wondered, especially for other people, when you move, how do you create that sense of community? And especially added the fact that it's harder, more challenging when you have a diagnosis for some kind of mental health issue, if you're just neurodivergent in, even if you're medicated, like you're still in a lot of ways trying to mitigate as much risk as you can when you're entering new spaces. So I wanted to hear from each of you. I know we're kind of technically out of time, but this seems to be a really nice conversation, Patsy. I'm sorry. Can we
No,
keep
go
going?
ahead. Keep going, of
Okay,
course.
if you guys have time though.
Yes, I will just say something that I started doing because I struggle with this. I'm slowly starting to make connections. Like I had mentioned earlier before we recorded, I played my first ever concert in Ireland, part of a wonderful festival in the county that I live in. And I've met some beautiful people, and I'm going to continue to hopefully foster these relationships. But in general, community is very hard for me. I've never been good at it. I've always been a sort of fringe person, and so it's hard. But what I do and have always done is I've found sanctuary in libraries. And it's no exception
Yes.
here. In my village, there's a library that's open Tuesday to Saturday. And I go there on Tuesdays and I say hello to my librarian, and she's probably my friend. I don't know if we're in community because we don't hang out outside the library or these specific times, but I know that I go there and I order my books, and she, we talk, she recommends books to me. And that's how I found solace in living in a foreign country. And any foreign country I've ever been in, I've always just gone to libraries or bookshops. I mean, I find safety in books. That's sort of my reading is my comfort, my security blanket, if you will. So that's what I do. And also, libraries are epicenters. There's always people there. So there's always somebody doing something, that's their community hubs. And so anyone that's traveling a lot, I recommend, or going to relocate, I recommend finding where your local libraries are and signing up. It will help you feel less lonely, and it's like you have these micro interactions with people which sort of give you the skill of making friends again, because like I said, I'm almost 50. I don't know how to make friends very well anymore. I have my very good close circle of friends. Even this, like being a part of feminist community, like Fourth Wave, like getting to do this with me,
Yes.
slowly making micro connections and hopefully making relationships that will take me on. I do believe in friendships across borders, and I do think that's one of the very big benefits of technologies, that we can have relationships across the world and grow them. But libraries is my big thing.
Good tip.
Yes. And honestly, I love the fact that you mentioned library, because those are the first places I started too. Now, Italy is kind of a warm culture as compared to, I think, Ireland. Like, you do have some warmth, but I think we are, especially here, everybody is kind of willing to talk to you. So it started with the theater, it started with the library. We have something called a circolo. Like, it's kind of like a community center where we meet up and we talk about events that we're gonna do. We volunteer. Volunteerism is so good. Just choose like a place that you kind of want to go to, but of course it is taxing. That's another side of it, I think. So now, Martine, you went from Italy to Canada, which I feel like is such a cultural shift. Like it's almost entirely the opposite. Like here we're so open, you can talk to your commesso, you can talk to your barista, whoever is serving you coffee will be your best friend. And then you're in Canada. Tell me, how was that transition for you?
Honestly, my experience is very interesting because it was always hard for me to socialize with people in Italy because on top of being neurodivergent, I've always had some very specific niche interests, such as reading, cinema, other things, and yeah, it's always been really hard. I always felt like a misfit until I left and went to film school,
Yeah.
where I found my community of cinephiles and like other writers and avid readers and all of that. So the same thing happened when I moved to Canada, it wasn't easy at first. The places where I found my communities were my writing program that I took at Centennial College in Toronto, where again, lots of writers, lots of creative people, lots of neurodivergent people. And then also my aerial community. I do aerial silks. And again,
Oh,
it's a very unusual type of activity where you have a lot of neurodivergent people, a lot of creative people, artists. So yeah, that is essentially my type of community of people who are creative, of people who are neurodivergent usually. And yeah, that's where I feel like home. And it's not, it's not easy to find that many people who are
mhm.
into that
The
specifically,
same.
but
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
Actually,
yeah.
before we move forward, actually, Patsy, just give me a second. So, Ndidi, as well, since you are in Ireland, I know they have such a huge music culture. And so I wanted to know, actually, are you in the pub scene? Do you go for
No,
the
I don't
gigs?
drink, so I don't really like to go to pubs very often. I will go from time to time,
Okay.
but
But for the live, yeah,
sessions are the kind of
yeah.
vibe that happen in pubs, and that's people playing Irish traditional music. And that can be
Ah,
very clicky and particular. And when you're not doing it in the way that is expected, or you just come in and you're trying to do anything original, you are treated quite coldly and like a weird
ah,
pariah. So it's not really that welcoming. There is a wonderful art scene and a music community, but this is a small island with very few people, so it's
yes.
extremely small, and it's hard to get in unless somebody brings you in that is established. So I'm in that process of sort of getting my foot in the door, and I'm slowly starting to play. Like I said, I have a few things coming up, and I'm meeting more people and getting more sort of awareness and doing it, but it's a very slow, very tricky thing where I need people to vouch for me. So I'm having to do a lot of
Mm.
proving on myself. But no, going and sitting in sessions, I only know a few Irish trad things, and I've pieced together some sort of commonalities between, you know, African music, African American traditional styles, and Irish traditional styles. There's a
Ah,
lot of overlap and a lot of correlation that not a lot of people actually would put together. But if they take a minute and learn a little history, they'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But the times I have sat in a session and sort of saying something, and it was they were fine. Like everybody was polite and nice, and I don't suck at what I do, so they're like, okay, that's cool. Like you sound great, but it's because it doesn't adhere to an expected stereotype of an expected bias of what this is and what this has always been. It's tricky and it can be clicky. And when you come in with some sort of new idea, it's not often received well, because what it does is it creates a feeling of unsafety. They don't recognize it as safety, therefore they can't process this new information quickly. It takes a minute. So I'm sure if I kept going and kept sort of showing up, I could probably shift that. But I don't drink and I don't sleep. So I have a whole
you
thing
don't
that
sleep.
no, perimenopause has got me in a life full of
Ah,
insomnia. So there's a lot of different side effects, and I have the insomnia side effect of it. So, if I'm not on certain hormones, I don't sleep anymore. So I don't want to go out because I'm exhausted, but I
of
also know I won't sleep, so I don't
course.
want to get further stimulated because I'm trying to
Mhm.
de-stimulate myself when the sun goes down. And also when you don't really drink, I don't want to sit in a bar listening to people wank on guitars and for
Understandable.
hours just so I can sing like a few lines and have them be weird to me. Like I just no thank you. So I'm not really a part of that. And maybe I should control because that's my own bias. It's based on an experience I had. So
Mm,
okay, but it still is my own bias. And I'm sure I could shift it and change the dynamic if I kept showing up consistently. But I have yet to figure out how to get the energy reserves to do that. So it's sort of
understandable.
there is a great culture, but it is pretty interestingly it's quite small and it's not that inclusive. I believe though with culture changing here and things changing here, I believe that will change, and I think that I can be one of the people that helps to bring that change. So I'm going to keep at it. But my experience so far has been but my experience in terms of playing live has been amazing. I only have a limited experience, and it was
Mm,
beautiful. It was very fantastic, and it was so welcoming, and everybody was incredible, and it was just so good. So I'm going to hold on to that and avoid pub sessions, but figure out ways to do more things like that.
No, that sounds like a good start at least, because you're still very new. So like you both have very different worldviews when it comes to that. For me, I guess there was also the addition of, well, I live here in Italy, and this is my sixth language, Italian. So then it's
Wow.
kind of, I am very visibly not Italian. I don't really do very Italian things, even though I live very close to Florence, to the center of Florence, where of course the huge artist community. So I do have a lot of artist friends as a result. But at the end of the day, there is a level of comfort that comes with being with someone who has the same accent, because of course I have very accented Italian. Not very. I'm pretty good actually. Sorry. But but yeah, there is, when you said that about inclusivity, I feel like a lot of times people don't notice that they're not inclusive. I think they think to themselves, we're actually so open. And I noticed that as well, because I've had so many people approach me and talk to me. But at the same time, that doesn't always turn into something else later, because they know that there is a barrier there, because there's a lot of cultural references you're not going to get. You're not going to, or maybe
Mhm.
you will, but they don't know. They don't know if you're going to be uncomfortable around certain friends. For me, for example, at parties, if I meet someone who speaks a dialect, like I have a few friends from the South, and dialect is, I'm not there. I'm not there. You can be very good at Italian, but unfortunately, sometimes if you're living north side, you're still not there when it comes to dialect. Some Italians from the next, I'm sure Martine, you can attest, some
Yeah,
Italians from
I
the
don't
next,
understand other dialects either.
yeah, from the next kind of, I don't know if state is the right term, from the, like,
Region?
yeah, the next region,
Hmm.
even the next commune, because like here I am in one commune, like a city. I'm in this city, and it has its own very specific, typical language and way of
Mhm.
speaking. And then you go to the next place, and they have their own, isms. And so even
Hmm.
within cities, there's kind of a, I don't know if you'll understand me. Maybe you might not. Now, Patsy, when we come to you, you're living where you're from, and you have that kind of melting pot as well, because I think you said you were from San Francisco Bay Area, you said?
Mhm.
Yes. So what was this like, staying where you are and having community? And are you still keeping up with it, or do you take some time off every now and then?
Well, I just have to say first, I'm so impressed that you can speak six languages. Wow. I love
Thank
that.
you.
I love that.
Thank you.
Um,
It's not
I,
good though.
no, it's great. It's great.
It's a soup
I
in my
think
head.
And I also have to imagine that it affects how you think
Yes.
because, and it gives you a more expansive thought, I would imagine, because of the different ways
Yes.
express, that language is expressed. I was surprised because we have a lot of Mexicans in California. And so Spanish is usually the preferred second language if you're going to try and learn a second language. And I was surprised that everything has a gender, like the table, the moon,
Yes.
the whatever. I was like, wow, how does that affect? Does that make them more gender essentialist? I don't know. But anyway, I found that interesting. But as far as living here, I think, well, the way I experience it, and maybe this is just a justification for not being adventurous, is I feel very nurtured by the land. I feel very, very much at home here. And I want to be here. I want to see these trees. I want to smell this air. I want to listen to these birds. And when I'm in different locations, I get discombobulated and I'm
Mm.
afraid, kind of like, I don't like not knowing what I'm doing. Where do I go? How do I get there? I get very anxious. So I'm
Mhm.
not really a good traveler. I also have four sisters, and our parents died young, so we bonded very closely. So we are very much in contact and community all the time. And other than that, fourth wave takes up all my time. So I don't
Mhm.
really have a need for a bunch of friends. I have one or two people I like to talk to, but I don't have time for it, really, honestly, to maintain friendships. So I have so anyway, I'm happy. I'm this kind of person who's happy where they were born. I was born in a more suburban area, more rural area,
Right.
about 80 miles out of San Francisco. I live in San Francisco now, but I also just recently got a little, we rent an apartment in San Francisco, but we just bought a little cabin in about 80 miles north, which is on a river and more rural. And I'm there now, and I like spending time out in the woods. So anyway, I'm not a big traveler. I don't like spending all, I mean, as far as being a tourist, I don't like spending all that money. But also I'm on a low level panic the whole time I'm on a trip. So that's not good for me. I used to have panic attacks. So
Oh.
I don't need any excitement in my life. I want everything nice and calm.
You
So,
actually brought up a really interesting point. Like, I do sometimes wonder if people who move are either thrill seekers or looking for a challenge. Because, look, I moved as an adult here, but I spent most of my time living in the Middle East. I liked the Middle East. I know the Middle East. Look, I was in the UAE and I was in Dubai, so extremely privileged. Everybody makes decent money and stuff. Like there's problems, but they don't affect you until much later. It's end of life care and stuff that's hard to get. And most people don't stay for that long anyway. And the ones who do tend to be rich, so not really a problem. For me, moving here, I did really want that, not a notch on my belt or something, but I did really want that kind of, yeah, I want to learn another language. And I probably will by the time I'm very old. Hopefully, I get there. Um, Probably have more languages, which also means probably my brain's going to be more frauded with just trying to keep up with what I already know. So, what about you guys? So, for example, in Didi, you said you've moved a lot from childhood, actually, even if it's like little moves in the beginning that turn into big transitions. What made you want to make this move to Ireland, for example?
Well, I tend to move places for my heart. So it's always like love. And like what I find about Ireland is all these latest stupid problems aside, I
Mm-mm.
feel a deep connection to this land. So when I
Oh,
when I got here and when I got to this little village that I live in, I was like, yes, like my body felt a release. And wandering the world as like a brown woman, as you know, there's a lot of stresses
mm,
on a regular basis and constantly being hyper vigilant and like so to be able
absolutely.
to actually feel a release, I was like, oh, and it feels like home. Like I love it here. All my little gripes aside, I absolutely love this country. I love the history of it. I love this land. Like I like to touch the grass, and I like to hear the
No,
birds I hear out my window. I like the cats that I have here. I love, I should say love, because it's very much my heart is deeply connected. When I go back to Canada for work and to see friends and family, I deeply miss being here because this feels like home to me. And I think for me moving a lot, I've always been searching for home because I've never had a place where I felt
yes.
safe enough to just be myself. And I feel that way here. And so I don't need to go anywhere. Patsy, like you, I'm not a good traveler. I don't travel, I move places. So I'm not going to like just pal around and run around. I don't really love that. Like I did go to Italy a couple of years ago. We went to Rome and then to Sorrento and Capri, and
Mm,
it was like a lot. I
yeah.
was exhausted. And it was only like 10 or 12 days. But you know, the first day, like I didn't even want to walk around everywhere. And Rome is a great place for walking around. You can go everywhere, Coliseum, you can
Yeah.
walk anywhere and everywhere and like see all the cool things. But I was just like you, Patsy, I was stressed. I was like, where can I get a good coffee? No, that place is not very good. Where can I eat? What time is it? Where can I go? Oh, I need like a allergy medication. I'm like, where's the pharmacy? Oh no. Like I get very, very stressed out too. And like, where's the train? How does the train system work? How does this I like to research it before and write it all down because I get very stressed out with travel. So if I'm gonna go someplace, I'm going to try and live there because then at least I can take my time finding my bearing to figure it
Mhm.
out.
That's so interesting. And like, I'm the complete opposite because I love to travel because I'll just figure it out when I'm there. And it always works out for me in the end. I'm sorry, but it does. So I don't I don't really look at it that way.
That's good. That's great.
But at the same time, like moving feels like such a challenge. I think that's harder to do. But the fact that you take it with stride and you feel more in control of the decision, I think that's a very interesting way of going about movement in general. Now, Martina, I know you said you moved starting 19. Did you move with family or did you move alone? And
No,
how?
I moved on my own. So I was in New York for a total of 6 years, starting when I was 19. I also spent some time living in Russia because I was learning Russian. So that's a whole different thing. Then I moved to Canada around, I think it's 3, 4 years ago.
Mm.
So I definitely think there's like that thrill seeking personality in me, which also makes sense in regard to my obsession with Ariel. So yeah, I just feel like I don't know. I don't feel that sense of unease when I'm in a new place. I feel a lot of curiosity, and I guess it's about pursuing new stimuli. Like I feel like that is something that I just need. Like I need to be learning new things, to be
Mm.
exploring new things. Always with a sense of baseline safety, of course. But
Yes.
yeah, I feel like seeking novelty is just a huge part of my personality in general.
Yeah, I kind of love that. And one sec, let me also check. Okay, yeah, we are 30 minutes over time. I know, I see it in your eyes. That's why I checked.
I just
And
worry because I mean I do have to sign off.
yeah, actually, so I think we have covered most everything that we were planning to cover, which was health, community, and just, what keeps you going wherever you live and how our situation looks like across borders. So I think we have met that objective. Now, Patsy, I don't actually have the YouTube here. Do we have more comments or questions?
You know, we did have more comments. Here, let me get there. She says, our Deborah, I love travel and all the details that have to be learned and the different way that people think in new places. Thanks for the great conversation.
Oh,
And I think, yeah, that was it for her. And I just wanted to say next week, I'm not going to be here. Uwana is going to lead the live
nice.
stream, and I'm going to be up in Mendocino in the woodlands and not have access to the internet for a week. So that'll be where I am. And then the following week is Muniba, and then the following week um, I'll be hosting, and Martina's going to be the guest. She has a background in film, as she's discussed a little bit here, and we're going to talk about the way women are portrayed in media and all aspects of that. So, of course, I hope to see you two, you three there, and anyone else who finds that topic interesting. And both Uwana and Munib are normally here, and they'll probably be here in future. Next week, they'll be here for sure. But thank you for coming. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everything. Thanks for leading, Sangeeta.
Thank you all for being here and for the amazing pointers that you all gave, and for the productive conversation. We hope you're going to make it again. And for viewers, if you are still watching, please like, subscribe, give us comments, tell us if you would like to know something in the future, especially for our principal editors who are going to be posting next. And yeah, thank you so much.